By late August, a tow truck lifted my brother's luxury SUV from my parents' driveway, and our family trust went into a formal freeze for review. A repayment would follow weeks later. I am 33. I am a vice president of marketing at a fintech in San Francisco. I thought I understood family betrayal. I expected cold shoulders, guilt trips, maybe a slammed door. I did not expect 5 business-class seats to Santorini charged through my personal card via Apple Pay, with my parents, my brother, my sister-in-law, and her best friend on the manifest, and my name absent. What they did not know was that I had already started an audit file. Clean. Time-stamped. Screenshots from group chats. Bank access logs showing an authorized user reactivated 4 months earlier. IP traces that pointed straight back to my parents' Wi-Fi. Even a short Ring camera clip that would matter later reviewed by counsel with personal details masked before any public display. If you have ever been the responsible one, the fixer, the person everyone calls when a card declines or a bill goes overdue, drop a hello and tell me where you are watching from, because this is a story about staying calm, documenting everything, and letting the facts do what shouting never could. My name is Samantha Reed. I build markets and crisis plans for a living, which means my day job is turning chaos into clean charts. I rent a modest townhouse in Atherton because it keeps my commute light and my boundaries firm. My parents are Emery and Lillian Reed. My brother is Logan, the golden child with an allergy to consequences. Reagan is his wife, my sister-in-law, a full-time influencer who has never met a filter she did not love. If this already feels familiar, stay with me. The specifics are the point. I grew up with the family label of the responsible one. In branding terms, that sounds admirable. In real life, it can become a trap. I self-funded my education and my early life so well that everyone quietly decided I did not need help. Then they decided I could be help. Here are the first breadcrumbs, and I will pay them off later. First, a fraud alert for 5 business-class tickets to Santorini bought through my personal card linked to Apple Pay. Second, a follow-up call from a bank specialist confirming that an authorized user profile for my brother was reactivated 4 months earlier and that the login originated from my parents' IP address. Third, a trail of small, boring charges that only become extraordinary when you line them up in a timeline. Fourth, a message from an unexpected ally, my brother's ex-wife, offering records she kept during her divorce. All of it documented, all of it legal, all of it prepared for investigators, not for drama. Tone matters here. I am not the heroine of a shouting match. I am a professional who learned that facts are louder than volume. So I locked my accounts, I preserved evidence, and I started planning. Not a scene, a sequence. I will show you how the sacrifice pattern set this up. I will show you how the discovery unfolded breadcrumb by breadcrumb. I will show you the quiet moment when the sky stayed blue, and I realized this was not a mess to endure, but a case to build. And then I will show you the public moment where, with my attorney and 2 neutral witnesses in the room, I presented a simple timeline that closed mouths and opened eyes. That is the setup. Calm, documented. Every personal detail masked before any screen went live. And yes, we will talk about the tow truck, the trust freeze, and the repayment that arrived after exactly as the timeline demands. Looking back now, there was always a ledger beneath our love. I was the responsible one. I wore the good daughter label like a name tag that never peeled off. I self-funded school. I stacked internships. I learned to live on spreadsheets and black coffee. My brother Logan learned other things. How to land on his feet. How to turn please into, of course. How to turn no into not yet. In our house, Emery and Lillian Reed had a rhythm. When Logan fumbled, a cushion appeared. When I excelled, applause did. The applause was free. The cushion was not. At 23, I sent home small transfers for surprise copays and missing tax payments. It felt generous. It felt adult. Then those moments grew into a pattern with a name, family support, the kind that visits forever. Looking back now, I see the escalation in neat little steps. A fuel card for family road trips and Reagan's brand shoots because gas is expensive and content is king. An auto transfer set up as temporary, labeled family logistics. In a banking app I did not check often enough. A stack of holiday bailouts where I was told I saved traditions. Each ask arrived wrapped in gratitude and urgency. Each yes trained the next ask to walk through the door. The big step arrived with chrome trim. Logan wanted a luxury SUV. He talked about safety, about reliability, about investor optics. I ran the numbers because that is what I do. The math argued no. The family argued yes. I agreed to co-sign, fully aware what co-sign means in the United States. Shared legal responsibility. No unilateral exit. If the borrower fails, the lender still expects the note to be paid. I read the loan twice. I signed anyway. The price with customization flirted with $310,000. The monthly payment was the kind of number that looks reasonable in a vacuum and suffocating in a storm. For a while, Logan sent his share on time. Then the messages started. A brand deal is late. A contractor ghosted. A client delayed. Could you float this month? I did because I told myself I was protecting my credit and his future. Both statements were true. That is how traps work. They feel like mutual aid right up until they feel like gravity. Looking back now, I can name the moments I trained myself to ignore warnings. The auto-pay receipt that posted at 2 a.m. from a station across the bridge. The sports streaming subscription that appeared on a statement I barely glanced at. The restaurant tabs that aligned perfectly with photos of ribeyes on Logan's feed. None of those charges are crimes by themselves. Together, they formed a map. I just had not learned to read it yet. My parents loved to say these things happen in families. They were not wrong. Families do triage. Families pass the hat. Families also learn to mistake a dependable daughter for a limitless fund. It happens quietly. It happens with compliments. You are so good with money. You never need help. You are a rock. Rocks do not ask for rest. There were kind moments. I do not want to pretend otherwise. Lillian clipped articles about my campaigns and bragged to neighbors. Emery introduced me at dinners with the pride of a man who believes he raised excellence. Then when a bill threatened the holiday table, both of them turned into accountants with my balance sheet in their eyes. We have always been there for you. Remember who co-signed your early lease. The line sounded like history. It worked like leverage. I started keeping soft records without meaning to. Screenshots of text threads where temporary became permanent. PDFs of receipts I emailed myself after late-night calls. A folder labeled taxes that was really a folder labeled proof. Not because I planned anything, because good habits are what I fall back on when I cannot trust promises. Looking back now, I realize the seed of my patience was fear dressed like love. Fear that saying no would make me the cold sister, the corporate daughter. Fear that protecting my accounts would make me the villain in a story where generosity was the only proof of belonging. If you have ever lived inside that story, you know it is sticky. It clings to your skin. It smells like guilt and lemon polish. Meanwhile, Reagan flourished online. Her audience loved her hauls and her planning tips. She learned how to convert attention into income and then into more attention. When sponsors came through, she posted gratitude paragraphs. When they did not, she posted inspirational quotes. When a trip needed to happen for the aesthetic, it happened. There was always a reason. There was always a caption. There was not always a budget. I want to be fair here. No one sat me down and demanded a lifetime stipend. It was subtler than that. It was group chats where a problem appeared and the fastest solver got a gold star. It was me in Atherton near San Francisco staring at spreadsheets at midnight and telling myself a few hundred here and there would not change my trajectory. It did not. Not at first. It changed my tolerance. Looking back now, the 3-year arc is plain. Year 1, grateful help. Year 2, helpful expectation. Year 3, expected entitlement. By then, the auto transfers did not need requests. They ran on rails. The SUV payments felt like a utility. I told myself this was temporary until Logan's promotion. He told me the same thing. Temporary is a generous word. It wears out quietly. The first big crack was not the Santorini charge. It was smaller, almost boring. A ping from a banking app that a login was made on my profile while I was in a meeting. I dismissed it as a glitch. Later, an email about a password reset I did not request. I tightened settings, swore I would run a full audit, and then I did what busy people do. I pushed it to the next day. That choice has a cost. This is important. When you hear a smoke alarm whisper, do not wait for it to shout. In the middle of all of this, there were also bright spots. Callie next door bringing over soup when I forgot to eat. Evan, our chief operating officer, quietly giving me grace on a Friday when I looked like a person who needed a door to close. Aunt Martha, meticulous and dry, asking pointed questions about a trust distribution that did not match its purpose. I did not know it yet, but those were the people who would help me translate frustration into a plan. Looking back now, I can also see the blueprint for the later receipts. My habit of exporting statements to PDFs would become a timeline. My tendency to confirm details in writing would become corroboration. My reluctance to escalate publicly would become the space to build a case privately. When betrayal finally rang the bell, I already had the binder. I just needed the will to open it. One more thing, and then we move forward. Co-signing the SUV did not make me naive. It made me human in a culture where daughters are taught that love pays every invoice. I knew the legal reality. No unilateral exit. Liability survives withdrawal of affection. I made a responsible plan anyway. If the borrower defaulted, I would engage the lender request a voluntary surrender and accept that a repossession might follow. I would prioritize documentation, so any later deficiency would be clear assignable and, if possible, negotiated. That plan felt theoretical when I made it. It would not stay theoretical for long. Looking back now, the pattern was not just about money. It was about roles. Logan got to be the idea. I got to be the implementation. He promised. I delivered. He posted. I paid. Our parents smiled like we were both succeeding. And in a way we were. He was succeeding at never touching the ground. I was succeeding at being the ground. That brings us to the Wednesday when the fraud alert hit and the first breadcrumb rolled into my palm. 5 business class seats to Santorini through my personal card linked to Apple Pay. My name left off the manifest. I will show you how suspicion became certainty, breadcrumb by breadcrumb, and how the timeline you just heard became the map out. The alert hit in the middle of a Wednesday status meeting. My phone buzzed across the oak table, spun once, and showed a red banner. Possible fraud. 5 business class tickets to Santorini charged through my personal card via Apple Pay. Passenger list Emery Reed, Lillian Reed, Logan Reed, Reagan Reed, and Reagan's college friend. My name was not there. I excused myself, stepped into a glass hallway, and called the bank. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone who had practiced calm in a mirror. I confirmed that I did not authorize the purchase. They locked the card. Then a fraud specialist named Marcus called me back. His tone was steady like a pilot. Here is what he found. An authorized user profile for my brother had been reactivated 4 months earlier through the online portal. The login originated from my parents' Wi-Fi. He could also see a trail of smaller charges that on their own looked boring. A sports subscription, mid-range electronics, restaurant tabs. Together they looked like a plan. Breadcrumb 1, the tickets. Breadcrumb 2, the IP address at my parents' house. Breadcrumb 3, the pattern of small withdrawals hiding in plain sight. I asked Marcus to email a case number and the timeline he was seeing. He did within minutes. I saved the PDF in a folder that already existed for a future I did not want. While I was still in that hallway, the family group chat lit up like a pinball machine. Logan, hey, the tickets are not going through. Can you fix it? My mother, honey, do not overreact. We assumed you knew. My father, separate from the thread, these things happen in families. Reagan on her story without names. Some people hate to see others happy. The performance was familiar. The timing was not. They were trying to board a plane with a card they had no right to touch. I did not answer. I walked back into the conference room, collected my laptop, and took the rest of my meetings from a phone booth. Then I did what I do best. I built a checklist and started at the top. First, I secured my digital life. I changed every password. I enabled 2-factor where it was optional and refreshed it where it was already on. I cleared saved cards from every shopping account. I logged devices out of my Apple ID and re-added only what I physically held. I took screenshots of each security screen with timestamps. I masked personal information in the copies I planned to use later. I labeled everything. Evidence lives or dies on labels. Second, I documented the Santorini purchase exactly as the bank saw it. Time, amount, merchant category, Apple Pay token ID, passenger names. I exported the confirmation attempts that bounced when the card locked. I made a note that my name was absent from the manifest. This will matter later, not because I wanted to go, but because exclusion explains intent. Third, I pulled the last 4 months of statements and ran my own quick audit. I did not guess. I highlighted line items that matched Logan's posts and Reagan's scheduled content trips. If you spend enough time in marketing, you learn how to cross-reference public behavior with private numbers. I saw the pattern even before Marcus's email landed. A dinner the night before a pitch video. A gadget that appeared in a behind-the-scenes reel. Gas at 2 a.m. after a late shoot. None of it is criminal alone. Together, it is choreography. Then, the moment that removed any remaining doubt arrived courtesy of human error. A screenshot popped into the family thread by mistake before it vanished. I had already toggled save. It was a cropped chat between Logan and Reagan from their side conversation. Logan, just use her Apple Pay, it is already saved from last time. Reagan, send me the code if it pings. Logan, Mom is with me, we have Wi-Fi. The message deleted banner appeared 2 seconds later. My copy stayed. Breadcrumb 4 explicit intent. Not an accident, not confusion, a decision. My phone rang. Marcus again. He wanted to confirm that I wished to proceed with a formal dispute for the tickets and to note the additional charges for review. His careful phrase was verified fraud. He reminded me how reimbursements on peer-to-peer transfers can work in the United States, not instant reversals, but credits after the bank verifies that fraud occurred. Words matter. I repeated them back to him. Verified fraud, reimbursement after verification. He thanked me for being precise and gave me the case number again. I logged it in 3 places. As the day folded into evening, the calls from home ramped up. My mother left a voicemail that started sweet, turned sharp, and ended with a sigh. We assumed you knew. You are making this difficult. Your father's retirement reputation cannot weather a scene. My father texted a list of reasons I should relax. These things happen in families. We co-signed for you once. A reminder packaged like affection. I saved everything. At 9, my doorbell rang. I checked the Ring camera before I moved. The screen showed my father on the landing, hands in pockets, face arranged for reason. I let it ring out. A minute later, the camera captured his voice through the door. Stop being dramatic. This is not a big deal. Remember who has helped you. He did not know the camera had already recorded enough to capture tone, context, and volume. I downloaded the clip and filed it. Personal identifiers masked in the copy I would use in any room with strangers. Counsel would review it before any public display. That note sits in the metadata. I am that person. Sleep did not arrive that night, but clarity did. I built a working total in a spreadsheet not to litigate online, but to make sense of scope. The ticket sat just under $29,000. The smaller charges that Marcus flagged would later push the verified misuse north of $38,000. I wrote a sentence at the top of the sheet in bold. Do not guess. Confirm. At dawn, an unexpected text arrived from a number I did not have saved. It was Elise, my brother's ex-wife. I saw Reagan's posts. He did the same thing to me. I have records if you want them. That complicated everything in the best way. It meant there was history I had not seen and a witness I had not expected. I told her I would meet her tomorrow at a coffee shop 2 blocks from my office. Neutral ground, bright light. She agreed, and then she sent a preview. A redacted bank statement from 2 years ago showing a withdrawal minutes before a transfer I made to Logan. A pattern inside a pattern. By mid-morning, my inbox chimed with Marcus's formal email. Case number, dispute open, timeline attached. He included the technical note about the authorized user profile reactivated 4 months earlier and the IP address tied to my parents' house. That is not a smoking gun in a courtroom by itself, he wrote, but for a financial investigation, it is strong context. I replied with thanks and attached my labeled screenshots. I'm not sure he expected a vice president of marketing to write like a junior forensic analyst. People surprise one another all the time. Then a final breadcrumb for the day, the one I did not want but needed to see. A calendar invite landed on my work email from our HR director. Quick check-in tomorrow morning. No panic, just a subject line that told me someone had made a call. I did not spiral. I started a new section in my file labeled Workplace. If my mother had called HR to paint me unstable, it would surface here. If she had not, I would apologize to the universe for my suspicion and get on with my life. Either way, the record would be clean. By evening, I had 4 anchors set. 1. The bank's lock and the dispute in motion. 2. The internal audit I had begun of my own accounts with timestamps and masked copies suitable for any room that required them. 3. The accidental screenshot proving intent to use my Apple Pay because it was saved from last time. 4. A meeting queued with the one person who had nothing to gain by helping me and everything to gain by being done with this pattern forever. I wish I could say I cried. I did not. My system failed in another way. I made tea, opened my laptop, and wrote a plan with little boxes I could tick. Tomorrow I would meet with HR, calmly answer questions, and document the interaction. Then I would sit down with Elise and collect her records. After that, I would call my neighbor, my friend, and my attorney, Colleen Go, and ask her to look at what I had. We would do this by the book, quietly, thoroughly, legally. That night, the sky over Atherton was painfully blue, the kind of blue that makes you think of vacations and promises. I stood at my window and watched a jet bank east. 5 seats to Santorini would remain empty. My name would remain off the list. And for the first time in years that felt like the right kind of absence. The day had started with a charge I did not make. It ended with a choice I did. The HR check-in happened the next morning. Citrus wipes, new carpet, a glass wall that reflected me back like a stranger who slept in her blazer. The director smiled with careful empathy and slid a single page across the desk. A concerned parent named Lillian had called. She used words like erratic and breakdown. She mentioned overtime. She implied risk. I did not argue feelings. I offered facts. Performance reviews that said exceeds expectations. A calendar showing normal hours plus occasional voluntary overtime. A brief note that a family dispute over unauthorized charges was under bank investigation. I kept my voice slow. Calm is a strategy when truth can stand on its own legs. The director nodded, thanked me for clarity, and documented the call. That was the moment the surface betrayal snapped into focus. It was not just the 5 business-class seats to Santorini. It was also a reputational flanking maneuver. If you cannot control the money, try to control the narrative. I stepped out into the corridor and felt the building hum under my shoes. Phones rang, printers sighed, conversations lifted and fell. Through the atrium glass, the sky was aggressively blue, the kind of blue that does not care about your life. I stood there and counted my breaths. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. This is important. The world will not slow down for your revelation. You have to slow yourself. 3 layers clicked together like a lock. Layer 1, the surface theft, the Santorini charge on my personal card via Apple Pay. My name absent from the manifest, the authorized user profile reactivated 4 months earlier. Layer 2, the deeper conspiracy, the IP address at my parents' house, the family group chat pushing urgency, the accidental screenshot where Logan told Reagan to just use her Apple Pay because it is saved from last time, and now a call to my company's HR painting me unstable. Layer 3, the pattern recognition, not an impulse, not a single bad day, but nearly 3 years of small, boring charges that formed a choreography once you lined them up against social posts and travel plans. Help became expectation, which hardened into entitlement, which matured into a scheme. I kept walking until the city air hit my face. Coffee and diesel and ocean salt tangled together. I headed 2 blocks east to meet Elise, my brother's ex-wife, at a corner cafe with big windows and a habit of overfilling the espresso shots. She was waiting with a neat folder and the posture of someone who has learned to make her own weather. She did not dramatize. She laid out redacted statements, text threads, and a slim timeline from her divorce file, dates when money drained from Logan's accounts minutes before I sent him similar amounts. A note where he joked about using my card because it cleared faster. She had kept everything because a lawyer told her once that documents are seatbelts. You hope you never need them. When the crash comes, you are grateful they exist. I thanked her. I apologized for not seeing it sooner. She waved that off. Betrayal is designed to look like love until you zoom in, she said. It is not your fault you stayed zoomed out. I left the cafe with more than paper. I left with corroboration. I walked a block and ducked into a quiet lobby to call my neighbor and closest friend, Callie No. She is an attorney. She is also the person who hands me tea when my sentences get tight. I told her everything, and then I stopped talking and let silence invite a plan. "We will do this by the book," she said. "Here is what that means. Keep preserving evidence with timestamps and clear labels. Mask personal identifiers on any copies intended for rooms with more than family. Continue communicating with the bank and your lender in precise terms. No social posts from you. No public accusations. When the time comes to present, we will present once factually with the right people watching." I told her about the anniversary party in August. At least 60 relatives. A rented ballroom, a slideshow. She was quiet for a beat, then said the most lawyerly sentence I have ever loved. "A captive audience is not a license to humiliate, but it can be the right forum for a single accurate correction of the record." We divided tasks. She would draft a cease and desist addressing workplace interference harassment and unauthorized access. She would also prepare a clean repayment proposal with terms based on the verified misuse, clearly separated from any unrelated family noise, and she would have a notary ready to stamp acknowledgments later that week. I would refine the timeline slides with scrubbed data and short captions reviewed by counsel. We would ask the venue for 2 neutral staff members to serve as witnesses to the reading of the letter and the delivery of the repayment plan. Not family, not friends. The event manager and the banquet captain would work. On my walk back, the city kept its rhythm. A bus sighed, a dog tugged. Somewhere a blender complained. Inside my head, though, something had shifted. I was not the crisis anymore. I was the case file. I opened my laptop at home and built what I do best, a narrative scaffold that would not wobble under pressure. Top page, a 1-line thesis for investigators and anyone else who mattered. Verified unauthorized use of personal payment credentials. An authorized user profile reactivated from the parent's IP address 4 months prior. Reputational interference via a call to HR, and a 3-year pattern of financial exploitation corroborated by third-party records. No adjectives, no heat, just a frame. Then I connected the breadcrumbs so they would pay off later in a single glide. The fraud alert time-stamped on a Wednesday mid-meeting. The call with Marcus, who would now be in my corner because I made his job easier. The family thread that revealed urgency and expectation. The mistaken screenshot that turned suspicion into intent. The HR meeting that proved the story was growing legs inside my workplace. The cafe handoff from Elise that stitched past to present. The call with Callie that turned paper into process. I printed 2 clean copies of the timeline for legal review with PII masked. I exported an outline for slides that showed dates and amounts without account numbers or device IDs. I wrote a single presenter's note to myself in the margin. Read slow. Do not explain. Let quiet do the work. At midnight, I stood on my balcony and watched the lights flatten into a hush across Atherton. The same blue sky from earlier had gone to slate. I could smell someone's late pasta and hear a distant train. The world felt ordinary again. My chest did not. Awakening is not fireworks. It is a hinge. 1 hour you are bracing. The next hour the door moves. I went to bed with 2 truths that did not fight each other. First, the people who should have protected me had rehearsed ways to use me. Second, I could protect myself without becoming them. Calm is not surrender. Calm is a blade when you keep it sharp. Tomorrow would be the start of the plan you have been waiting to hear. We would freeze what needed freezing, notify who needed notifying, line up the neutral witnesses, and set a date for a single factual reveal with counsel present. Not a scene, a sequence. And every step would honor the same rule facts over volume process, over drama, piece over performance. I did not post. I did not plead. I planned. Morning began with a legal pad and a pot of tea. I titled the page Sequence Not Seen. I placed 3 calls and 3 online requests to the credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. I froze my credit at each. I added an initial fraud alert for 90 days. I made a note to convert it to an extended alert once the police report number was in hand. Every confirmation email was saved as a PDF, time-stamped, labeled, and mirrored to an encrypted drive. I replied to Marcus with a clean timeline and labeled exhibits. I used his language because words matter in banking. Verified fraud. Reimbursement after verification. I did not ask for instant reversals on peer-to-peer transfers. I asked for a documented review under their fraud policy, and I attached the accidental screenshot where Logan told Reagan to use my Apple Pay because it was already saved from last time. I masked account digits and device IDs in the copies intended for any room with strangers. Counsel would see the full unredacted set. I rotated every password. I enabled two-factor where it was not mandatory and reset it where it was. I revoked old sessions on my Apple ID and generated new recovery keys. I removed every saved card from every shopping account, including the ones I barely use. I checked the list of authorized users and terminated any that should never have survived a previous cleanup. Screenshots, timestamps, labels. Evidence lives or dies on labels. I called the lender on the co-signed vehicle. I stated the facts and nothing extra. Payments tied to Logan were delinquent, the vehicle was in his possession, and I wished to initiate a voluntary surrender. The representative walked me through the steps, the pickup logistics, and the reality that co-signers in the United States do not unilaterally exit liability. I repeated it back so there would be no confusion. I understand I remain responsible for any deficiency after auction unless otherwise resolved. We scheduled the voluntary surrender to begin the week of the anniversary, when my attorney would already be present in town. I emailed to confirm. Read receipt logged. I called Aunt Martha Reed. I did not accuse. I informed. There were withdrawals that tracked suspiciously with the times I had loaned Logan similar amounts. She asked for documentation. I sent a tidy packet, the bank's case number, my timeline, and a short memo that separated verified misuse from family noise. Within an hour, she replied, voice crisp, even in text. Pending review, certain distributions would be paused. She reminded me that a trustee's duty is to the trust, not to feelings. I thanked her and did not forward the message to anyone. Process works best without an audience. I documented the HR meeting in a neutral email to legal and HR, attaching a brief summary of what I had provided and noting the reported call from my mother. I kept the tone informational. No adjectives, no speculation. Evan, our chief operating officer, asked one question in our check-in. Do you feel safe? I told him yes. He told me to keep doing exactly what I was doing and to route any further interference through legal. He also did something small and powerful. He authorized me to work quietly from home the day after the anniversary, anticipating fallout. Leadership is sometimes the permission to breathe. Callie, my attorney and neighbor, drafted a cease and desist that addressed workplace interference, harassment, and any further unauthorized access to my accounts. She prepared a clean repayment proposal based on the bank-verified misuse, $38,160, with annual interest at 10% until paid, and immediate cessation of all access and impersonation. She scheduled a notary to stamp acknowledgments later that week. Then we solved the witness gap I had flagged in my notes. We asked the venue to provide 2 neutral staff members, the event manager and the banquet captain, to witness the reading of the letter and the delivery of the repayment plan. Not family, not friends. They would initial a brief attestation after the reading. Paper beats memory. I built 3 slides and only 3. Slide 1, a simple timeline of charges and transfers from January through July, no account numbers, no device IDs, only dates, categories, and amounts. Slide 2, a summary line from the bank showing the authorized user profile for Logan, reactivated 4 months earlier from an IP address at my parents' house. Slide 3, a single sentence, noting a call to my company's HR department from my mother with the date and time. At the bottom of each slide, in small text, a line that said, "Personal data masked per counsel's instruction." I exported to a locked file and printed 2 clean copies for legal review. In the afternoon, I filed an identity theft report with the local police department. I provided the bank's case number, my timeline, and the screenshot that captured intent. I did not dramatize. I asked for the incident report number and received it. I sent that number to Marcus and to the credit bureaus to convert the initial alert into an extended one. I saved the PDFs. I labeled them. You already know the refrain. I revoked the old Apple Pay token tied to the compromised card. I confirmed with the issuer that new tokens would provision only to devices I authenticated in person. I verified device lists on my accounts and deleted any hardware nickname I did not recognize. I added a small physical key to my digital life because sometimes the best second factor is an object that lives on your keyring. I did not reply to subtweets. I did not correct vague posts. I did not screenshot and share. Silence is not surrender. Silence is staging. Let them build a narrative that cannot survive contact with a timeline. 2 days before the anniversary, I met the country club's event manager under soft lighting and floral centerpieces that were not mine to admire. We tested the projector. We practiced the slide handoff. The banquet captain initialed a short form acknowledging that he would serve as a neutral witness to the reading of the letter and the delivery of the repayment plan. I handed the manager a sealed envelope with the flash drive and a printed script labeled Presenter's Notes. Read slowly. No debate. No questions. End with thank you. By sundown, the sequence was locked. Credit frozen. Bank dispute live. Apple Pay token revoked. Police report filed. Lender queued for voluntary surrender the week of the party. Trustee alerted and reviewing. HR documented. Counsel prepared. Neutral witnesses secured. Slides scrubbed and ready. Notary on standby. Power did not feel like rage. Power felt like a checklist with every box inked and a pen that still had miles in it. The night before the party, I laid out the portfolio on my kitchen table. I added 2 pens and a small stack of acknowledgement forms Callie had drafted in case anyone tried to say later that memory was the authority. I set an alarm to arrive 15 minutes early. I texted Callie the plan and received the only reply I needed. Sleep. Facts at 10. From my balcony, the sky slipped from blue to black without asking. The pieces were set, lender scheduled, trust review active. Marcus satisfied with the bank's timeline. All that remained was the one thing I'd avoided my whole life, saying the truth out loud. At the country club, 60 relatives, a soft carpet, 2 neutral witnesses. I arrived early with my portfolio, my attorney, and a plan that didn't need volume. 3 slides. January, July dates, categories, amounts, personal data masked. Bank finding my brother's authorized user profile reactivated 4 months earlier from my parents' Wi-Fi. Heading context for investigators. A time-stamped call from my mother to my HR. No commentary, just proof. I read a short statement. Callie followed with a cease and desist and a repayment proposal, $38, $160, 10% annually, after 30 days interest waived if paid within 30. Immediate stop to access and impersonation. The event manager and banquet captain initialed their witness forms. Pens clicked. The room exhaled. Logan called it fake. Reagan lifted her phone, then didn't. Aunt Martha stood and paused his trust distributions pending review. I thanked everyone and ended it there. No debate. The plan was a reading, not a fight. Consequences arrived on schedule. The SUV went back under a bright sky. The auction cleared the note. My cosigner liability closed. Marcus confirmed the dispute file was complete. My father's emeritus title vanished quietly. Reagan's partners pressed pause. My mother tried to resolve things over dinner. Counsel replied with documents. 3 weeks later, a certified envelope, a cashier's check for $38, $160 on time interest waived. I scanned it, filed it, and made dinner. The quiet tasted like relief. Life expanded. Promotion to SVP. An award, a $50,000 scholarship for caregivers, a shadow box, the check copy on one side, my old house keys on the other, not trophies, reminders, minimal contact, clean ledgers, steady breath. Here's what I learned: you can love your family without funding their denial. Facts carry rooms. Calm is a strategy. Say it once with witnesses and counsel, then go home and keep your peace.